View of Paradise Lost, The Fall of Adam. I've decided because book 9 is so formidable and substantive, I decided to split book 9 into two parts. This is the shorter second part of book 9. Just want to offer a quick summary. Again, mark your books, take a screenshot of this, do something. This will help you sort of wander through this segment of book 9 of Paradise Lost. We have had the fall of Eve. We've discussed Satan's three-part attack, his appeal to her vanity, his autobiographical argument, and then ultimately his appeal to her intellect. And it takes him a long time in three different strategies to conquer her rhetorically. So here, obviously, the next step is to have Eve convince Adam to eat the fruit. So this section of the poem begins with an Eve soliloquy, thinking about how to discuss the fruit with Adam. I'm going to talk about that later. Secondly, Eve starts discussing the fruit with Adam and sort of reveals how she perceives the fruit. And it's going to sound sort of familiar. It sounds satanic. Third, Adam has a moment where he sort of inwardly soliloquizes about the nature of his fallen loved one. He relatively quickly affirms his love of Eve and that he can never be apart from her. So he seems pretty easily and quickly persuaded to eat the fruit, even though he has had a thorough angelic education about Satan and about temptation and about what's right and wrong. The persuasion of Adam is pretty rapid. Fifth, Eve offers the fruit. Adam falls. Like, here's the weird thing. Milton has the unenviable task of writing this chapter whose plot points people have known forever, and he has to still make it interesting. So we see not only Adam and Eve's curious response to being fallen, but the very just sort of natural environment groans at the fall of Adam. Interestingly, it doesn't do that after the fall of Eve. That might be an interesting thing to talk about. We have the sort of new kind of lust and sex after the fall, and this feels very differently than their intercourse in the blissful bower earlier. We also get what's in the Bible, which is they both feel shame for the first time, so they seek to cover themselves. And then starting on line 1134 to the end of the section, they have their first argument. Okay. An obvious passage that I think I have to discuss is how Eve convinces Adam to eat the fruit. Adam isn't Eve. The poem says a variety of things about why they're different. And even though Adam is said to be almost like more in the image and likeness of God because he was directly created by God, Eve's created from Adam. So she's sort of two steps removed from God. And that he is sort of born and shaped for the life of the mind, and she's, beautiful. And that being said, it took a long time for Satan, who's an angel, to convince her to eat the fruit. So here's what she says to Adam around line 862-ish, 863. This tree is not, as we're told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown opening the way, but of divine effect to open eyes and make them gods who taste. Hath been tasted such. The serpent, wise, or not restrained as we are, or not obeying, has eaten the fruit, and's become not dead, as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively has so prevailed that I have also tasted, and have also found the effects to correspond. Opener mine eyes, dim erst dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to Godhead, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee can despise, for bliss, as thou hast part, to me is bliss. Tedious, unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy as equal love, lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I then too late renounce deity for thee. when fate will not permit. You'll notice, among other things, is Eve, to convince Adam, does what's pretty logical. She basically reformats and re-summarizes the satanic arguments. Um, and particularly the autobiographical argument. Look, the snake did this, so what's there to fear? And then also the appeal to the intellect. Interestingly, there's no evidence that she appeals to Adam's vanity. So that's the missing appeal. She gets right to Satan's second and third arguments. Um, and then her new appeal is that she's appealing to their actual love from before the fall. That as long as he doesn't eat and she's eaten, they're existing in two separate planes and they can't really be together. And that's probably the argument that's going to win him over, because it's an argument that appears, or as Paradise Lost would say, seems as if it's based in love, wanting to be together. And it's the gap between appearance and reality that's important. So Adam's response, think of Eve. Think of Eve's in-depth thought processes after the three temptations of Satan, and how long and how rigorously she thought through his temptations. Adam says these things: how can I live without thee? I think there's an 80s ballad that has a similar title. Perhaps thou shalt not die. Perhaps the fact is not so heinous now. He starts thinking, right, about whether death is even bad. We are one flesh. To lose thee were to lose myself. Again, there's a lot of beautiful love poetry in Paradise Lost, and most of it, actually, if you look into it, is a sign that these people have been tricked into thinking this. And the poem, as Adam's falling, the poem tells us about Adam. He scrupled not to eat, against his better knowledge not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. I don't know. The poem seems to want to keep Eve in this sort of 17th century female gender box, but she's a pretty formidable intellect and wastes no time convincing Adam to do this thing that he was light years from doing. So I wonder if the poem is correct in this perception. And then a subtle, easy to miss passage is Eve's imitation of Satan, what I alluded to before. And here's some examples. When she's thinking about how to approach Adam, she actually wonders about how to appear to him, to Adam. In what sort shall I appear? Satan, chooses to be a serpent for a particular kind of reason, and Eve obviously can't shapeshift. But she's imagining other selves. Now that she's fallen, she can pretend, right? She has Satan's argument for inferior who is free. And then talking about the nature of eating the fruit, no death but life augmented. Knowing good and evil isn't death. It's a richer version of life itself. These are things Satan says to her. This is her recent education, and she's spitting back the lecture notes to Adam. And then I just wanted to touch on this. I'm skipping a lot, right? This is how the chapter ends, and I think it's really cool. It's not cool for them. They have the world's first argument, obviously. There's shame, there's lust-filled sex, and there's an argument, and then there's physical, sort of like a divide. Thus they in mutual accusations spent. So they're both going at each other. And the hours that they spend accusing each other of things are called fruitless. And I can see Milton smirking. Why would he call them fruitless? Well, no, it's true. They don't produce anything. These petty arguments don't produce anything, therefore they're literally fruitless. But clearly he's playing with language, because the core moment that dooms them involves fruit. So he's playing with language here. Neither self-condemning, now that they're fallen, they don't tend to look inward and introspect. They're just barking out loud towards each other. And of their vain contest, which is this argument, appeared no end. It seems like now they're going to just endlessly argue in a fruitless way after eating the damned fruit. The prompt is simple. You know the plot of the fall of Adam and Eve. What surprises you about how Milton depicts Adam and Eve's fall? So, possibilities, and it's not relegated to these, but maybe it's the nuanced differences between how each character is tempted. Maybe it's whether or not Eve has an easy job convincing Adam. Maybe Adam is more vulnerable than Eve, it turns out. Maybe the really interesting descriptions of how the fruit, the eating the fruit affects them. Maybe it's something else. Um, but really interesting stuff. So just think, you know the skeletal structure of this actual story. What does Milton add? What surprises you? I hope this preview video helps, and good luck with your reading.